Welcome to the offices of the Washington Blade. This is the first in what will become a series of video blog entries where we take you behind the scenes of a story of the week, or we just interview reporters and staff members about what's on their mind and give you a little bit of behind the scenes, what goes on here at the Washington Blade each week. For our inaugural edition of the video blog, I have with me the normally mild-mannered Josh Lynsen, who is our news editor. And Josh is on a tear because of a column in the Washington Post yesterday by Courtland Milloy about bisexuality. And the column essentially appears to blame bisexual men for the AIDS epidemic. So I thought we'd bring Josh in front of the camera to explain his outburst. And let me first quote from Courtland's column so everyone is on the same page. This is what he writes. In the column, he advises a fictional Widow Jones to take heed that, quote, her new dude is on the down low, surreptitiously having sex with men, then bringing it to bed with her, and says among, quote, the primary modes of transmission of AIDS are bisexual men posing as heterosexuals and outright dogs who make a sport of sexual conquest. Josh also happens to be our resident bisexual. So here he is to explain his outrage. So Josh, what set you off about this column?
It just struck me as a very ill-informed and frankly hurtful approach to the subject matter at hand. First of all, it's a crisis that needs a much more inclusive approach, not an isolative approach. This should not be an us versus them contest. This should be all of us working together for a common cause. And by trying to assign blame to any one segment of the population does no one any favors. It does nothing to further discussion, and it, frankly, as I said, is a very ill-informed approach to the entire idea.
Okay, well, it's not surprising to see such commentary in the pages of the Washington Post, which has a very mixed record when it comes to covering gay issues, as readers of the Blade are well aware. And Josh was not the only one upset by this column. Darlene Nipper weighed in. Darlene is currently with the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, and she told Josh, quote, the demonization of bisexual identities must stop. The HIV/AIDS crisis is bad enough without Milloy's scurrilous and inflammatory rhetoric against bisexual people. Neil Giuliano, who is the president of GLAAD, also weighed in, and he said it's, quote, disappointing to see misinformation about the so-called down low repeated in the pages of the Washington Post. So Josh is not alone in his anger, but I wanted to take this, take a step back a little bit, because obviously what he wrote was over the top and very offensive. But Josh, what does this say about how bisexuals and bisexual men in particular are portrayed or not portrayed in the media, in the mainstream media in particular?
Sadly, probably the most ready example that comes to most people's minds when you talk about bisexuals on a media presentation level is Tila Tequila's show on MTV, where, ooh, will she pick the man or the female at the end of the day with whom she chooses to shack up. This, of course, does nothing to equalize, to portray bisexuals in an equal or fair light at all. It's just difficult to have any media, admittedly gay media included, portray bisexuals in an equal light.
And why do you think that is? You're the news editor, by the way. You could assign some stories on bisexuals.
And I make every attempt.
So, but why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it has to go back to the very notion that America is a dualistic society. It's A or it's B. It's black or it's white. It's good or it's evil. And there's very little gray area that people can easily comprehend. As such, with bisexuality falling into that gray area, as it were, it's harder for people to comprehend. It's harder for people to acknowledge, and it's harder for people to simply accept at the end of the day as an equal and eligible for the same rights and responsibilities as straights and gays that bisexuals should be.
What's the big story among bisexuals that we're not covering, that we've missed?
There's an undercurrent that I've sensed among bisexuals, that if ENDA had come down to, instead of a trans-inclusive fight, a bi-inclusive fight, that bisexuals also would have been thrown under the bus, as it were. There is a fear that bisexual men and women are being marginalized, that we're only included simply because it's easy to throw on the B, no one's really going to question it. There's a fear that it could one day reach a point of reckoning where it's easy to get through Congress a G or an L legislation, but if the B becomes liability.
Good point. Okay. Well, that's the topic du jour. Bisexuality, hating in the Washington Post. You can check out Josh's rant on WashingtonBlade.com, and Courtland Milloy's column is available at the Washington Post's website. And if Courtland would like to come by and sit here at the desk and answer Josh's criticisms, we would love to have him.